Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.
Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas and conversation, while asking the question, is anything what it seems? Based on my series, The Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. I also hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel, Better Than Not, so I can continue to bring you great guests like I have today. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today it's a pleasure to welcome, and in a surprising way, Steve Nordin. Steve, welcome. In a minute, you'll get to understand why this is a bit of a thing. Steve is a musician, has been for a long time. He's also was an active firefighter. He wasn't in that position very long before he became the union president of the firefighters where he was, and we'll learn more about that. And then not long after that, he became assistant fire chief. So he's been in that world for a long time. But I was going to say part of what brought him here today was not that, because I didn't even know that. But anyway, welcome, Steve. This is crazy because
thank you, Douglas.
the interesting part of this podcast today is how we met. So, because I'm laughing still because my wife and I had taken an Airbnb, right?
Yeah, exactly.
On Bowen Island.
Yeah.
We were trying to get a couple of days just to be free of everything.
Yeah.
And we got there and we're trying to hook up our TV, or hook the TV up so that we could watch a movie.
Exactly.
And we could not get this remote working at all. I'm like, what's going on here? We could only go up and manually touch it and still wasn't working. So we phoned the person who owned the Airbnb, comes down there, and he just, I don't understand. Like, it worked before. So Steve was the previous occupant of this Airbnb, and somehow or other they got connected. And then I think it was the next morning, you came by with the remote. And you said something to the effect of, I don't know how I got them mixed up. And I said, but Steve, you brought it back. Which I thought was kind of astounding when I think about it, even still, right?
Yeah.
So as we were talking, I was kind of intrigued by you spoke kind of quickly, and you spoke about a few things and were very friendly. And I started to think about what's behind a person who brings back a remote to an Airbnb. Or even takes one away
in today's world, yes, that's really a question to ponder.
So I reached out to you. We traded information, and lo and behold, after we got connected, you're a musician,
right? And
so I have lots of music background, and I thought, okay. But not only that, you've recorded.
Yes, I did.
So I thought where we'd start today, like, what brings you to have that honesty to bring back a remote, and how did that reflect even into your music world? Like, how did it all get started for Steve Nordin?
I just think I'm with the remote. There's just an inner sense that it's the right thing to do, right?
Okay.
I think sometimes you have that inner self motivation in a circumstance to reflect on what's happened, and then you want to do the right thing. So the right thing was I had mistakenly taken the remote, and I needed to return it to you so you could enjoy your time in the Airbnb. So that was my motivation. Some of it centered around what is going on around us too, because there would be situations where somebody would have that remote in this world we all live in and say, the hell with it, right? I'm not getting in my car and going back. Let the owner go and buy a new remote, and because I'm doing my thing now, and that doesn't include going back to you and giving you the proper remote.
Well, you could also like be off the island and on your way to Calgary.
I could have
right?
been.
Like that's
Could
not
have been.
it's not going to be easy to turn around.
But fortunately, we were still there, and we came back, and we had a conversation. And you could imagine when I come back, and it was a family thing we were doing at Bowen.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
they said, "Oh, Dad, did you meet the gentleman?" And I said, "Yeah, it's Douglas Gardam." And we had a conversation, and he's invited me to do a podcast. And they're going, "What? A pod? What the hell?" And so I said, "Yeah." So I said, "We'll see where it goes." And then we carried on and did the family thing. And we try and do this family thing at least, 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Where we re-energize family dynamics. So,
Well, that's
so
cool.
yeah. So it's a good day.
So take the family pack, the idea back. How is it that you got into music? Because it's one thing to play music in a basement, practicing and stuff like that, play live. But you recorded too. Like, how did that start for you?
I think to a certain degree, I love being the center of attention. Okay. And there's nothing that sort of pushes you into the fore. But in my mind, in those days, and I was young, I was in my 20s, is if I'm a musician, and at that time, the British invasion was happening, and when you saw videos of these young Brit musicians in an audience. Some of the early Rolling Stone concerts, you've got people, young women just storming the stage, trying to grab a lock of Brian Jones's hair or Mick Jagger's clothing. And I said, you know what, that suits my personality. So I just I formed a band. Initially, we were called the Cavemen.
Okay. That's catchy.
Then we moved on to be called the Outer Limits with a W. After the TV show.
Oh, right.
And then, and my initial band was made up of friends in my community.
Okay.
And I was a bass player, and I was a very active, animated bass player. I wasn't the Bill Wyman standing in the background. I moved myself to the front. Okay. And I could see not only did I have an audience being in a band, I had an audience with the way I played the bass guitar.
Oh, okay. And you sang.
And I sang. Yeah, and I sang. And so there was another band. We started to get a bit of a reputation that came to watch us. And so after we finished and we're cleaning up all our equipment, a person came over and said, we need to have a conversation with you. And so
specifically
I said, okay.
With you.
Yeah. And so the band members they're looking over saying, what the hell's going on here? So we went and had a sidebar conversation. They said, we'd like you to come to one of our rehearsals in the east side of Vancouver. He said, but there's a catch. We don't want you playing bass. We want you to sing. Oh. And I said, what?
That's how you became lead singer.
Yeah. So I go to this sort of rehearsal in somebody's basement over, the gentleman's name was Don Geppert. And we started rehearsing, and then he knew a guy named Bob Douglas, who was a bass player of note back in the day.
Okay.
And then they knew a drummer named Frank Gigliotti, who was the president of the BC Lions, was a business entrepreneur. And to this day, he owns California Cult Classic Wines. And so we recruited a guitarist, and his name was Russ Sankey. He's since passed on. And he came over to audition, and I always loved the Yardbirds song called The Nazar Blue, and Jeff Beck used to be able to get feedback. So we put the Nazar Blue on as I was looking for a blues sort of guitarist. And this Russ Sankey, just blew it away. And I said, he's it.
He's the guy.
So, so away we went.
And what were you called?
We were called The Rain. REIGN. Yeah.
So I'm telling you right now, Steve, this is very interesting, and it's a bit creepy for me.
Yeah.
But my second book is called The Musician, and the character does what you just did.
Oh, really?
He was a bassist.
Yeah.
And
there you go.
They found another bass that he realized. This is fiction, by the way.
Yeah.
But he could never play, and he knew it. And he became the lead singer.
Yeah, lead singer. So similarity right there, right? See, I didn't know that, right?
How crazy is that?
Yeah, I know. So,
but that's a fiction book.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
based
yeah.
on- that
And
was
so
a-
we
Cool.
would, so anyway, I'm recruited as a singer.
Yeah.
We practiced because we were popular. If I look back on it, we didn't practice in this basement because we were looking for gigs. Anytime we played, we attracted an audience. And that audience would say, well, can you come and play at our high school dance? Can you come and play at our...
You can't beat that.
And no. So we were practicing and doing new songs. And me being the lead now, I'm kind of leading this group in a way.
Sure.
Right?
You're the front man.
Yeah. And so I had
Oh,
a
wow,
lot
that
of
is so cool.
impact on the kind of songs we were doing. And I love blues, right? But we did R&B stuff because the kids wanted to dance. But if I could be on stage and allow Russ, which we did, to do the Nazar Blue, and Russ used to take his Les Paul guitar and go over to his speaker and get that feedback. I'm like, I've died and gone to heaven. And so,
That's very cool.
and so we practice because we play, and we just, then a gentleman named Stan Kerr, he heard us, and he was sort of kind of a promoter of note in that era. And he decided to get 4 bands that he thought were unique. And he was going to take us into the studio. So he took us into the studio. These 4 bands went into the studio. We recorded an EP with all 4 bands on it. And then we did a tour. So yesterday I was going through all my nostalgia with the band and ran across posters where we played at the Peach Bowl in Penticton. We toured the island.
And played a lot.
Yeah, we did. And we did a lot. The record you can still find on YouTube if you dig deep enough.
Under the Rain.
Yeah, Under the Rain. And actually every now and then there was only about this EP, there was only about, I'm going to say, I don't know, 5,000 copies released. So they're still in circulation, and every now and then they'll resurface on eBay, and people will want $500. The last one I think resurfaced, somebody had it in France, and they were putting it on eBay to sell it, and so that was in euros.
Wow.
And then we used to do a lot of the downtown clubs. One of the most interesting clubs we played at was Vancouver. Yeah, was the Penthouse.
Okay.
And the Penthouse was an after hours bottle club where really wasn't supposed to be. And the Filiponis were sort of the gangsters in the day kind of thing. In fact, I think one of the Filiponis ended up being killed in the club upstairs, going way back if you research all the news articles. And so we would play we'd come down at 1 a.m, set up, and we would play for all these. And you used to have like Jack Wasserman, people of note. You couldn't see 4 feet in front of your hand with the smoke, people smoking. And if they thought the cops were there, they would have a little signal come on and a light. So we would stop playing because they're not supposed to have music, and there's not supposed to be no drinking. And then they used to have this girl called Melanie DeMilo, and her byline was, she's 4 girls in one. So she's this big, robust woman with big, huge breasts dancing to these men in this bottle club at 2 a.m. And we would be the band behind her, and all you would see is these breasts going around like a propeller. And then we would go to a Denny's and have coffee. There was nothing, nefarious about it. We got to know her as a person. And, back in the day, it was acceptable that if you're coming down, you're not seeing Miss Twiggy. You're seeing, their marquee item was, you're seeing 4 women in one. Oh, wow. Miss Melanie DeMilo.
So now you've done this, right? You're going through it.
Yeah.
How did you get to be a firefighter from being in a band doing that?
I decided all my cousins went to university, and I'm at home in a band, in a rock band.
How many years have you been doing this for? In the
fire service?
No, in the band.
In the band, oh God, 40 years, like, right? If you look back in the history.
No, but when you're kind of like looking at this in your time.
Oh, in my time, I'm probably been in the band for about 3 years. We'd probably potentially be on the verge of some success, right? Based on what we were doing and our popularity. I know.
Yeah, for sure.
We were playing at Tupper High School at one event, and I used to, I would twirl my microphone around like Roger Daltrey. I would be jumping on top of my speakers. And at this one event, the vice principal who's supervising this dance comes over. That's it. Stop. Time out.
Oh, wow.
Right? And he came over and corralled us all and said, if this guy doesn't calm this down, right, I'm shutting this dance down, period.
Oh, wow.
And Frank Gigliotti said, sir, I will take full responsibility for Steve's actions moving forward. So we played on and I calmed it down a little bit.
Okay.
I used to throw out tambourines until I realized, you're not making a hell of a lot of money. But the girls would be all there and they'd be, tambourine. And one memorable event, we were playing in an outdoor venue at the Armories. And we attracted this crowd. I don't know if it's because to listen to us play, but somebody wanted a tambourine when we finished.
They knew about it.
Yeah, they knew about it. They heard about it, right? So we'd throw it out and do all this stuff.
Oh, cool.
And so then I got on. So
these are fond memories.
Fond memories. And I had determined early in life that I did not want to work because in the summer when I was going to school, and then I went on to King Ed, I used to work sort of menial jobs. I worked at a place called Walker and Webb, putting school desks together, and the working conditions and environment was down on 4th and
wasn't where you wanted.
Yeah, not what I wanted to be. So I decided I didn't want to work. I didn't want to be this guy that worked 5 days a week. So I started looking at jobs. What kind of job could you get to appease your parents, right? Yeah. That you're actually doing something other than being a driftless musician. And found that firemen had this unique shift work. And so I applied. I applied at Vancouver. I didn't get accepted. I found this ad in the paper for the University Endowment Lands Fire Department. The closing location was Victoria because it was a department run by the province. At that time, the province ran the University Endowment Lands Fire Department and 2 other departments in BC. And so I, one day, got on the ferry, went over to Victoria, asked for an application, filled it out. When I went for my interview, they asked me, said, well, where do you live? And I said, well, I live in Vancouver. He said, well, how come your application says you filled it out in Victoria? And I said, I wanted to be a firefighter. I said, why wouldn't I go to Victoria? And I think that quote got me the job. So I get this job, and I think I'm going to be subjected now to 6 weeks of intense training because I'm going to be a firefighter. I'm going to have to save people's lives.
Yeah.
And I go in, and the chief says, you're starting tomorrow night. And I'm going, what? How am I going to get all the training? He said, well, you'll get on the job training. And the driving force was that 3 firefighters had quit and gone to Richmond. And so there was overtime implications. Just get a warm body in there that we're paying the basic wage. Forget about the overtime. Wow. And so I start and I rode my bike in because I lived in South Vancouver. And I finished on a Friday morning. I'm riding my bike into Marpole, and I'm looking for a place where I can just sit and relax. So I go to a corner store. I go in and get a chocolate bar or something, because at that time, coffee shops weren't like they are today. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, my God, I am there. I have won. I've worked 2 night shifts, right? And I'm now off for 4 days before I have to go back to work.
You're a firefighter.
Yeah, I'm a firefighter. So I absolutely loved it, right? I absolutely loved it. And so, and the other thing I have to reflect back on, my wife and I were high school sweethearts. She'll probably hate me for saying, she was very popular amongst the men based on her look, her demeanor. She was born in Clacton-on-Sea in England. So there were all these dynamics, and that somehow I need to meet this girl, and we met. Her
Were you the lead singer then? When you met?
I was no, I had maybe on the peripheral, but
Okay.
so we met. I think her initial reaction was, "No, I'm not interested in this guy." Till one of her girlfriends, we were at a dance, and this is like we'd had 3 meetings up, and said, "Well, what's your relationship with Steve?" And he says, "No." She said, "I'm not interested." And he says, "Well, all those other girls are." So that was, she'll hate me for saying this, but what the hell? So anyway, so we connected up, and she has been such, she's gone through hell and back with me in our relationship, raising kids, and has always been there supporting me to the extent I'm at this stage of my, every now and then I will see her just having a coffee. I'll go over, give her a hug, and tell her how much I love her and how much she means to me.
No,
right?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so she now gets attracted to me. We're in this band. I need to move. I get my driver's license. I have an old Plymouth sedan.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get speakers and equipment to all the gigs. And so I take this Plymouth sedan, and we cut all the side supports in the back seat, and take the back seat out, and she's in the front with me so we can put all the equipment in. So there's you can't even sit. It's like a station. We created this station wagon. Then as back in the day, the vehicle started to have rust around the headlights. And then the door that she used to come to the dances with me stopped working. So I don't have any money. I don't have enough money to get a new car. So I look at the front headlights and reconfigure them with concrete. So,
the days.
And then the door, I put a coat hanger from the window crank to the window crank in the back seat, and take a wood wedge, and it drops down because it's so heavy, and would force the coat hanger out and close the door for my wife. So one day we get pulled over by the police, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to see the door. Then he comes over, registration, driver's license, Mr. Nordin. And so he goes up to the front of the car, and he goes, bang, bang on the headlight. He says, "One of your headlights was out. Just want to let you know, you might want to get that looked at."
He's turning on.
And it came on.
You never know.
No. So, what I thought was going to be horrendous, the car is going to get towed. I don't have and it was not a safe vehicle. No, go in. So, yeah.
So now, get back to where we are with your firefighting.
Yeah.
You spent the first night, you said a couple of days. You've got no training.
Yeah.
You become a firefighter.
Yeah.
It didn't slow down for you. In fact, it probably was an advantage, right? That you didn't have to go through all that, because you kind of get
you merge in, you have to learn on the fly. I started to make my own manual, because it was a manual that was just, that not many pictures. It was just grammatical words that didn't really make a lot of sense. So at that time I had a Polaroid camera. So if I'm doing my self-contained breathing apparatus, I would take a picture and all the components and how you put it on. And then I would Scotch tape them. And of course that got up to the fire chief, that who's this guy, doing all of this stuff over and above just being a normal firefighter. Right. And so I learned on the job, and then I learned some really interesting characters in that job, because some of them were veterans of the Second World War that were senior, that were old enough to be my father in the day. And I got to know them and their experiences, and
they got to know you,
and they got to know me, right? And there was a sort of gravitational pull to my personality with them, and I moved towards them because I found them unique and different.
Sure.
And they spoke to a time that I had no idea what they. One was in an air base in England called R for Robert. One of them was a troop on the ground troop hit the boat was running in Italy. His name was Jimmy Bathurst, known as Seamus. And so we decided, my wife and I, we were living in Markwell, that we needed a dog. And so our first dog we named Seamus.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And then I told him at the fire hall, he goes, "What the hell?" Named a dog after me. And then he kind of went, okay, I'll live with that. And then I think he took a little bit of pride that I saw something in him to do that, to name our first dog after him, right? And then we used to have a guy named, his name was Ralph Darlington. And he, since he got this nickname, Nigel Buck Hammersmoke from the UBC. They're taking a picture of him coming out of a building where an alarm had happened. And some intrepid reporter student with the UBC took a picture of him coming out with the firemen, and they just referenced it. Nigel Buck Hammersmoke from the university. They just came up with this name, and he became known for that for the rest of his career. And he said he was a very unique dad. And in fact, in terms of our group, one of his daughters, Sharon, is sort of involved. And when she hears references to her dad, she's very complimentary to us as a group, that we recognize that her dad was unique
that's really cool.
Unique and special. Yeah.
So we're in this mode because we're going to get into like very young, like very early into this. You get some fairly senior responsibility, but was there a call it event or a call that you went through in those days that like is particularly like maybe harrowing, or was a big experience for you, like where you were, I'm a firefighter, this is what I'm here to do?
There was, our fire chief in the day, this was before the creation of BC Ambulance Service.
Okay.
Our fire chief decided we are going to take on responsibility for pre-hospital care, and we are going to acquire an ambulance, and we're going to treat patients, and we're going to transport patients to Vancouver General Hospital.
Okay.
So we acquired an ambulance. It was red.
You guys were ahead of your time.
Yeah. But there were other fire departments in BC that were kind of dabbling in it too.
Oh, okay.
And when Dave Barrett and the NDP got elected, they decided because it was all sorts of remote communities saying the pre-hospital care system as it stands now is not working. Right up here, I could wait for hours waiting for somebody to come and address my needs. Right. And so the fire service was dabbling in it. They, through an act, they wanted to change the landscape of pre-hospital care. We still carried on doing it. As a result of us carrying on, the Paramedic Academy approached us, and a gentleman named Roger Gibson, who was a practicing paramedic, came out and trained us out at the student union building at UBC, and we became primary care paramedics, which was EMA2 in the day. And then they started to augment some of our costs, because at that time we were absorbing the costs but there was no UBC hospital, so we kept responding to VGH. So in terms of one of the first fires I had was 5 o'clock in the morning. I've been on the job for 4 months, and it's 5 a.m. It's a January. And I just look at this fire and I think, and doing the best I can to make sure all safety things are in them. So I put my SCBA on, I've got my turnout coat, I take a hose line. We had an old 42 Ford, that was our main truck, and it's still around today. Vancouver Fire Rescue Services has preserved it, and it's out at Fire Hall 10, and we just actually had an event at UBC, where it came up. So that vehicle is still there, and people will say, you actually fought a fire in this thing? And I said, yes, I did. And it was, at the end of the day, we put the fire out, and we even had to call for mutual aid. We had an agreement with Vancouver that if we encountered a fire that was bigger than our ability to handle, we had a contract, and Vancouver would send Fire Hall 19 in to assist us. And in this case, Fire Hall 19 came in, and we had a battalion chief, and we fought the fire. And when I went home, if you look at today's standards of safety, I am in my shower, I reek of smoke, I go to take a Kleenex to my nose, I'm blowing out smoke. And not in today's age of firefighting, if you're doing that, that means you've had a leak in your SCBA, you haven't had your SCB on, you haven't had your turnout. But at that time, this was a rite of passage for me, that I've actually gone and I fought a fire and I did it. And the fire chief actually called me up and said, by all accounts, you performed admirably in terms of fighting the fire and helping out and doing what you did. So I felt pretty good about it.
Cool.
And then as far as the ambulance goes, huge number of calls. We had an incident. I wasn't involved in that one, where a girl decided that the stress of life was too much. So she put herself in a bathtub with gasoline and lit the bathtub on fire. And our firefighters, paramedics had to respond and deal with her. And she was, at that time, she was still partially cognizant, and the pain had gone because the nerves endings had been burned because, and another couple of instances were really bad MVAs. There's a lot of winding roads out at UBC, and the vehicles would impact on trees. This one particular case, it's a couple that had just been married. They were kind of on their honeymoon. The husband had been drinking, and they smashed into a tree. We've got the steering wheel up against their chest. We're trying to get the pressure from the steering wheel off. She is not in the best of shape, and there's a nurse there. She decides to come on board the ambulance with us. And now we've got to transport them to VGH and try and save them. And we're doing CPR, keeping the airway clear. And but I am, as a firefighter, that those moments of being a primary care paramedic and a firefighter taught me that the system probably needs to ask itself some questions. It needs to be able to have a conversation. Unions need to be able to have a conversation where they can sit down and actually hold a conversation. What's best? Right now, there's a fear factor with politicians. You take this on and you're going to be in a toxic sewer of just who's doing what, who's doing that. And there's a lot of preconceived ideas now in the system, especially with emergency room doctors, that probably don't see the true benefit of actually having firefighters involved. But I believe that when we're involved, they do. There's two things that stick out to me into the politics of who I am. One is community. And in this day and age, we politicians and governments have slowly taken that away from us. They've neutered us.
As far as community goes,
community and having a voice and being collectively saying, we think this is best for us. And then addressing the issues, whether it be addiction or parks or schooling or safety or policing, right? And that if you get firefighters involved, they make a difference. They just do. They make a difference just by who they are.
So taking this back into your history, as far as you weren't long as a firefighter before you were kind of taking on a more responsible thing to lead.
Within a year, I'm the union president. I'm the union president.
So with that happening, you're also in this prior to the time of, like, in today's world, you see an incident of, I'll say, trauma, significant trauma, as you kind of described, the car accident or whatever. Today's world, there are counseling and those services available to the firefighter, to the paramedics, to help them through these, I'll say, things that humans aren't necessarily supposed to
horrendous
see.
events.
Right.
In their work life.
In your time, when you were doing this, that wasn't really there.
No.
You might have someone kind of put their arm around you and say, like, if you need time or whatever. When you stepped into this now role, you've already kind of alluded to this, you're starting to recognize these things already are necessary, right? It's like, when you mentioned community, I mean, that is part of what community is about, is supporting one another, right? How did that start to broach in as you move into this pretty, I'll say, responsible position very quickly?
Because I became, within a year, I'm the union president and president of Local 901, and we are members of the International Association of Firefighters.
Right.
And we're mixed in with all the fire departments, for the most part, in BC, other than the volunteer, right? And so we were managed by the province. We didn't really have a process for collective bargaining. Then,
so you've got multiple levels of things.
Well, initially they used to call it collective begging. You would go over and say, we think we are entitled to this based on what Vancouver is doing, or Richmond, or Delta. But the province had the option of saying, well, we don't agree. No. and so go away, right? We're not dealing with it. Then the BCGU was created with a man named John Fryer.
Okay.
And they used to have an office on 4th in Vancouver, near 4th and Arbutus. And that's, so anyway, he was sort of outspoken Brit. And so we became members. And I thought, okay, here's a light for us. We are now going to be in a component with the BC Government Employees Union.
Okay.
And we're going to now be able to negotiate. So as the president, I go over with BCGU negotiating team as IAFF Local 901. And so I'm sitting in the room.
And this is brand new for
this is brand new. So I'm in Victoria and we're negotiating. And then I see that we are 60 in a conglomerate of 1,600 based on carpenters, plumbers, electricians. How much of a voice is 60 going to have in terms of pushback within this collective bargaining group? Well, it didn't take too long before I realized we don't have any pushback. We're probably maybe worse off, because if the fire service is getting 1% as an increase overall within the province,
Right.
even within this new structure, we're getting 0.5% just because they can. You don't have a voice, right? If you're trying to push up in the system. So as a result of this, I ended up getting our department as the president of Local 901, and the other two fire departments, which were at Trunkiel and Essendale. We held a meeting and we went on strike. Not only did we go on strike against the province, we went on strike against the BC Government Employees Union.
Bold.
And so we've got picket lines, but we are responding to emergencies.
Okay.
And we were running the ambulance. So somebody said to me, I've got a newspaper clipping. Well, what's going to happen if you transport somebody to VGH? He said, well, we're just not going to fill out the billing information, but we will fill out the patient care. And at that time, we were billing patients $5
For transportation.
Call for transportation to VGH, right? And so we go on strike, and the union's mad, the province is mad, trying to get us back, right? And I am not acquiescing until I see that there's something going on that's going to benefit us as the fire department in the union. And so we end up getting to a point where we hire Harry Rankin, an old-time cranky counselor in the city of Vancouver, and a lawyer. He represents us. We go to the Labor Relations Board. The Labor Relations Board says, yes, there needs some mechanism where you're getting treated fairly. And when we figure that out, you need to get back to work. So we went back to work and we figured it out. And as a result, we became the highest paid fire department in all of BC. And I took great pride in going over to a conference of the other IAFF unions in Victoria, and each local gets to announce how your negotiations are going. So I get up in the podium and I announce that we've got this. And I remember at the time there was a guy in Vancouver named John Bunyan, and he was just, how the hell could this happen? We're the largest fire department in BC, and I'm having a tough time moving the negotiation boulder up the hill. And here you are with 60 firefighters, not only taking on the province, but taking on the union, and coming out at the other end with some better working conditions and wages because you stood up for what was right. And then
that must have been like a great feather in your cap in a way, right? Like
it was
to hold on.
But go ahead.
But I can't help but bring this to your days as a lead singer.
Think of this, Douglas. Think of this. You're a lead singer, or you're a bass player in a lead singer's clothing. You're in a band, and you're in front of the audience, and you look down, and for as deep as you can see, there's a bunch of mostly girls, screaming girls going, oh my gosh, he's here. I'm as close to him. Now you become a firefighter. You respond to an emergency. The people look at you. whether it be a fire or a medical emergency, and they go, "Oh my God, he's here! He's going to help out." There's an analogy between being a
Interesting.
rock
Okay.
musician and
Yeah.
doing the kind of job I did.
Because you're saving people.
Yeah, that's right. I'm saving people. I'm putting them in a better place than they were. And as a fire service, they call for help.
Yeah.
As a musician, they're there to be entertained, and you're doing a good job. So it was a natural fit for me. So psychologically and mental health wise, it's never been something that I've had to bear right?
But you also bring kind of a neat thing, because occasionally I talk about how the trades, as an example,
Mhm.
versus like the university educated or the academic kind of world.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I kind of felt with the trades
Yeah.
is in the trade, an electrician or a plumber,
Mhm.
what you just said about you're the fire person that has come to the site,
Mhm.
and you're equipped to help them with the problem they're having, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you're kind of
Yeah,
news,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're getting like it's happening very quickly, right? Like you're finished
Mhm.
and whatever.
Yeah.
You're not, and the trades are kind of like that in a way too, right? Somebody has a plugged sink or a plugged toilet. Like it's not the same level.
Yeah,
of
no, but
concern.
it's
it's a problem, right?
it's a
Like,
problem.
My house is
I'm calling for help.
and
Yeah.
the plumber comes in,
Yeah.
and almost like in a couple of hours, the problem's gone.
Mhm.
They've got instant gratification
Mhm.
because usually you're very thankful that the
Yeah.
plumber's fixed your problem,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Likewise, as a firefighter,
Yeah.
you've like got that. And I kind of sometimes wonder that's missing in parts of our world, because especially like the educated part,
It is.
because you go for a very long time before you get that, right? Like you
Mhm.
work on a project for months, if not
Mhm.
years, a new launch of a product, as example,
Yeah.
or a new project and you spend a long time on it. You don't get that. You unplugged my toilet.
Yes.
Like
yeah.
you put out the fire in our kitchen, or
Yeah.
like, and I feel sometimes it's kind of missing,
Mhm.
like in far as in our world, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The reason I bring that up is because I think now, as you start to talk about it, you're going to be in that kind of switch too, right? Because you're moving from the world of direct, he's here to
Yeah.
save us, so to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah.
to now negotiating and working with, I'll say, systems,
Mhm.
improving the environment. How did that change your world? Because now, like as the lead singer, you go out and you do your thing.
Yeah.
You're getting instant cheer for the song.
Yeah,
sang, right?
yeah.
Firefighter similar.
Yeah.
Now you're going into things don't move so quick, and it's like, and this to me kind of breeds us into like your world as the assistant fire chief, and some of the things that you've been taking on.
Mhm.
Be it in South Delta,
Yeah.
be it in the fire hall we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, how does that shift in your world? Do you kind of feel like you're already, I was always meant to do this. I just had a different road than yours.
I think at days I have been sort of gifted with longevity in my life. Gifted in my mental acuity is probably sharper now than even when I was younger, for some reason.
And you have your
right,
experience.
and I have, on top of that, I have all these experiences.
Yes.
I'm a great energizer for me is connecting to young people.
Okay.
Like
Interesting.
this, I've already had, we had a garage sale in the summer. So the last 4 Halloweens for the first 3, I built a stage. I got the full Gene Simmons Kiss outfit.
Oh, no way.
My wife is an artist and interior designer. So she would spend half an hour putting me in platform shoes, putting the makeup on. And then I did sound, and I would be out for the kids coming on Halloween. And like with Gene Simmons, I was out there for maybe 10 minutes. So kids would just hang out. When's he coming out next? When's he coming out next? So this last Halloween, I decided to change it because I was a DJ also too.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I did a DJ gig at Shoppers Drug Mart in Tuason Mills.
Oh wow! Just recently,
I'm the only guy in a sea of women buying makeup DJing, and so I decided to go out dress up as Darth Maul from Star Wars. And so I've got the cape, I've got the hoodie, and my wife puts all the makeup on, and I'm DJing dance music. and much to the neighbor's chagrin, based on, because it does take away from, oh, look at the kids, oh, look at your costume, and I'm on the other side of the street blaring dance music. That's fairly, because the speakers are able to have high volume, no distortion. And it is a wonderful thing to behold if you're out there in the middle of that and you're dancing. Because if people hear distortion, even though they might like the song, they'll form an opinion that, no, I don't really like this, because they're hearing the distortion of the music.
Yes, yeah.
Right. And so but there is a kind of, I was doing a sound check on Halloween night at 3 p.m, and I just wanted to make sure everything was, I had the stage set up and my DJ table, and we had the Darth Maul outfit and the makeup in the kitchen. My wife's going to put this on me. And so I go and do a sound check, and the neighbor across the street is trying to do some kind of intricate calligraphy. And all of a sudden she hears this blur, and the pen goes off the table. She comes out and goes, Steve, what? And then she goes, and she's mad, right? Now I'm like embarrassed. And then she comes back over and gives me a hug. She says, I don't understand what you're doing. So it's a bit stressful in thinking about doing it again, because I can understand with the knee. It does detract from, but I have had so many people come by and said, oh, are you going to be up this year as Darth Maul doing dance music for the kids? And so I'll do it.
Nice
tone the music down a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So cool.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're talking about that, that's what I was going to say, like that example, when you're starting to broach now into these more, I'll call them senior roles, right? Responsibility.
Yeah.
How does that start to get you into, or some other things that you had to go through when you can organize, you can put these things through? What other kind of things have happened that you've had to step into?
Because
of that.
I have, to the detriment of me, monetarily, I have a difficult time separating myself from truth. I seek the truth. And if you seek the truth and you can get people on side, then it becomes empowering.
Yes.
And there are certain stages in seeking the truth where you could pause and say, this is going to be to the detriment of me.
Yeah.
And so I, in my career, it certainly was to the detriment of me, because I would seek out truth, whether it be in the union.
Mm-hmm.
When we moved over, we merged with Vancouver Fire Rescue Services in 1995, and that's a whole other story. I became this entity that was, but really wasn't.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So identifiable as a was, but when you came over, you're really not one of us.
Mm.
You're this something else. And so
nothing is what it seems.
No, nothing is what it seems like. And so I, that whole amalgamation, I had to figure out, either I have to exit stage left, or I have to figure out a way of sort of empowering myself and getting through it. And so my key was to resort back to community, strengthen the fire service, especially strengthen youth. And so I decided I was going to work with the Firefighters Union in Vancouver, Local 18. And I proposed this idea that, what do you think if firemen were in the elementary schools talking to kids? And then move it even further. What about if we went into the high schools? And I perked the interest up of the union, because I knew if I was going to go into management, that would be a strength to say, well, we already think this is a good idea, as opposed to management coming and think, because there would be this, you thought of it? No, we're not doing it. Right. Yeah. You're in management and you don't even know how to communicate with us. Now you want to do this preposterous thing. So I reversed the whole project, and the downtown east side got a downtown east side nurse named Sherry Hudson said, Steve, are you with firemen in elementary schools and high schools and teaching? I said, as a matter of fact, I am, Sherry. She says, could you come down and have a conversation with me? She says, I'd like to go over some things with you. So I go down. I can't believe the environment she's working in. Just to get to her office, it's like I'm going into 2 levels of security in a prison, right? With boom, and it's not soft doors closing, it's clang, locks, and then I go into her office, and she's got huge issues with the downtown east side and trying to engage the addicts and the prostitutes. And so she takes me on a tour. I had no idea. We go into, women that are on drugs, that are expecting babies, and, just hell on earth. And so we go back. She says, "Do you think you can help?" And I said, "I think we can. It may take a little bit of time, but I think we can." And as a result of what we were doing, we formed an infinite amount of partnerships. Because to make this work, so we had free advertising in the Vancouver Courier, which no longer exists. We had partnerships with St. John Ambulance, the Red Cross, the Life Saving Society, all working together, designing courses. We ended up designing a course, which I still have all the stuff, called 59 Minutes Could Save a Life, because the attention span of an addict is minimal, to say the least. And when they got exposed to a firefighter, you wanted them to leave with a positive in their life.
Sure.
And so just having access to a fireman, and in that moment, give them some hope and maybe change the course of their life, right? And because I go back to my old adage, when firemen are involved, they make a difference. And we made a difference in the downtown east side. So we started doing all of that. And then I learned that Calgary Fire Department had this program where they were actually opening up fire halls to the public, where people could actually, go inside, as opposed to, in most cases, if you were to knock on a firehouse doors, you would be treated courteously. But there would be this kind of, we're here, you're there, how can I help you?
Right.
But there's no, come on in, have a cup of coffee, let's go. We just got some donuts, we've ordered pizza, would you like? So I knew that if you could inject that cohesive commonality, we're actually firemen in a community vet, it would make a significant difference in terms of the fire service and the communities they serve. So our experiment was Fire Hall 18 in Kerrisdale. So we had people come in, and you could actually firemen. And so we got Calgary came out, did the training. We had Pfizer, it had a vested interest, right? Because they had somebody, as a result of what they're doing, I need to go to my doctor, get medications, and the doctor's going to recommend a Pfizer drug, right? I knew all of that, but they still helped out. And we actually had the public come in, and the firemen would do their blood pressure, talking to, people in the community, doing a cholesterol check, and then doing an assessment after and telling them everything looks good from our end, but there are some little blips here. I would recommend you go see your family doctor. So we are in I just learned the other day, UBC Hospital closes at 8:00 at night. And the community at UBC at this time of year, it's just started. Huge, right? And you just go, we have a huge issue in South Delta with every now and then the emergency ward closes for lack of staffing and overtime and everything else, right? We now have some communities saying we're going to open up urgent care centers because the province can't deal with it. And maybe the province would be happy because now there's the question, is my tax dollars that I pay in my house taxes now going towards healthcare, when the mandate says this is the province's responsibility? And in the meantime, while we have these conversations, nothing happens, nothing gets done, right?
It strikes me, I'm kind of a lay person, right? Like I'm on the outside of this, I'm not connected with this, but when you kind of mention this about the firefighter, I think firefighters are kind of in a unique position here because they're not the police. No. Which has its own, like, they're here to protect us, to keep us things, to follow the law. Yeah. But there can be like a certain sense of what they're about as well. Right. Yeah. In the firefighting world, that's not there. Like it's like you're as a firefighter, you're there if I'm in trouble. Paramedic kind of fits in a similar thing. Yeah, but if I'm in trouble, you're like one of the things I'd heard years ago is a paramedic sees you on your worst days.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
that's right. You call for help.
And
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
way, a fireman is in the situation too. They're seeing you. You mentioned it earlier, like a trade.
Yeah.
They're there. They're here to help us,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
You're kind of in a unique position to me to be able to move into the community to help with many of the, shall we say, situations that we are developing today, whether it be the drug problem, the alcohol problem, and you're fighting this today, or you're driving to this day.
Yeah.
A big push is what you're all about. That's why it keeps coming back to, you've kind of been on this trail since you were a lead singer, like chasing down to figure out how do we make this happen for not an audience now, like in music, but as a community that kind of needs it. We read it in the paper every day.
Yeah,
right? There's something else going on.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So if I was to ask you now, where do you feel you are? Like as far as progress, like
I am at the stage.
You need a lot of help. You're not about to give up.
I've engaged my community of Beech Grove mainly on the environment and trees, because we are Beech Grove.
Okay.
Because we've got a grove of trees, we've got a beach. And so there's been a tone deafness to the people we elect in the analogy of that name. So right now in my community, we have, because Beech Grove at one time was, you came from the Lower Mainland, you got a ferry, you came across to South Delta, and you went to Boundary Bay. You found yourself a nice little cottage lot, and you built yourself a cottage, and then you put your rowboat and all your life preservers and your fishing stuff. And that's where you came for the summer. Right. That was your parking space. Right. And so now that is all changed with population growth and transportation. The access is simpler. But the pressures on my community now are upwardly mobile young people who have a lot of money, who on a Sunday, they decide to come out to my community and wander around, and they, maybe the wife's expecting, or they have a small child, and they look and they say, wow, what a wonderful place to raise our family. And they give each other a hug, and they look at the impending baby coming, or the baby in the stroller, and they put an offer in on one of these cottage-sized lots. The issue is the cottage-sized lot has trees, and I'm not happy with building a cottage. And I have the financial wherewithal to build something that's more than a cottage. Okay. And so, but that comes at the expense of the trees. So I have, right. So we need to, but don't worry, Steve. I'm not one of those ones that you're fighting against. As long as I get my way, then I will join you in the voice that says this should not be happening in my community. But I've already built my 2,400 square foot house. I've got a swimming pool in the backyard, and I'm totally devoid of trees, and I'm okay with that. Okay. Right. Then in terms of doing that, you find out that a lady in 1947 thought that Beech Grove was worth preserving. And there needs to be some dialogue between development, housing, trees, the environment, and what Beech Grove stands for. And so she managed to convince the city and the province to work together to produce an indenture that said, moving forward from 1947, this shall be the footprint and sort of the foundation for Beech Grove, which in today's politics means absolutely nothing. Zero. So I have taken on many causes as it relates to trees. I managed to rally my community in regards to the Beech Grove Golf Course, which our mayor is a member of. He had to recuse himself because of the project that they were pushing. But at the end of the day, he's still a member. Right. And the political mirrors, and he's recusing. Yes, in fact, his physical presence isn't there when we're going to discuss it. But the footprint of terms of, and the golf course was having financial difficulties, right? And so they went from 3 houses, and then all of a sudden I'm driving home and I see this sign goes up and it says, we're going to build $22 million plus townhouses with rooftop decks. I go home to the wife. I tell her, Marion, and I say, this is the sign. And I go back upstairs. She says, I yell down to her, I think I'm going to get involved. And she said, I wouldn't expect anything less. So I got involved, rallied the community, and I'm really so we set up tables, we talked to the community, old style, just things that are missing in our days with technology, right? And just everything in terms of the politics and how we manage ourselves. And we won the day. And so initially, it was...
Say that again?
Yeah, we won the day. Yeah. So initially it was, well, you're leading this, you're going to speak. And so we would meet at Boundary Bay, right? Like, and there was, there was about 8 of us, I think, that were the leaders. And then we branched out and had tables, everything set up. And I designed a petition saying, no, we don't think this is a good idea. And so they said, well, you're going to speak to council. I said, no. Well, who's going to speak? And I said, well, I'm telling you, I'm not. And so then they said, well, Steve, we need this is going to council in a couple of weeks. You have to speak. And I said, well, who would you recommend? And so there was a gentleman named Jameson. And he's young, he's in his 20s. He's just started a family. He's decided when I put this out, I'm going to get involved and help Steve out. I said, Jameson should do it. And he said, Steve, I can't speak. I'm a horrible speaker. I'd be nervous going in front of council and speaking. And I said, that's fine. So we have another meeting at Centennial Beach in Boundary Bay. He taps me on the shoulder and he says, I'm going to speak, but I'm going to speak remotely.
Oh, okay.
And I said, okay, that's a stop. I said, okay, Jameson's going to speak remotely. And they, good for you, Jameson. Sure. Right? And I'm saying, I'm determined. I am not doing this. If the thing falls apart, I'm going to stand my ground. And so then we have another meeting just before council, and he comes up. He says, I'm going to speak publicly. So he goes to council. He's a young guy. He has all these petitions. He gets up. He's nervous. He's tripping over his words, but he's a young guy that passionately believes in what his community has done and rallied. And council supported the motion not to move forward with the development based on Jameson talking. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. And so then we just had another issue where we got involved with where the developer wants to build towers in the middle of Tawasin, right? And everybody knows the minute you say yes to even one tower, it proliferates out. And so there's being a rallying point within the community. There was basically 3 groups that formed as a result of it. There was a group called Dream South Delta. There was our group called Communities Tawasin. And then there's a guy named Alex, a young guy, who's got a website called Delta Voices for Responsible Development. So there's a lot of like-minded people that have opinions as it relates to. So anyway, we got on our bandwagon and went to council meetings, and we talked to Dream South Delta was very active in sort of banners on 56, and we were very active on knocking on doors. And our process was, anytime you say to a politician no, there's a knee gut reaction. Ours was saying, pause. This needs to be rethought. And I know there's an election coming up in a year. Right? Like a year this Saturday, everybody, a year this Saturday, get out and vote, because all the municipal elections are happening a year from this Saturday, and everybody needs to be aware of that. And in their communities, get out and vote and make people's voices heard. So, so we're at the end of the day, council and everybody asked me for an opinion. I said, they're not going to approve this. And they're all going to come out with window dressing saying, gee, we believe in your cause. And no, we're not doing towers. But the shiny, shiny little object off in the distance is, I want to get re-elected in 2026. I mean, you look at what's going on in the city of Vancouver. I would say it's disgusting based on the politics of, we're going to have a zero. That part, ABC has had 3 years to develop who they are as a party and identity. They had a by-election, and basically their identity is a mess. And so they're now scrambling around, not necessarily what makes sense, but politically, what is going to give me the best chance of survival? Well, telling everybody that when your tax notice comes out in May of next year, there's going to be no increase, right? And then,
So it's so interesting when you say this, Steve, because there was two things that kind of came to my mind that I learned years ago. One of them was a friend, and he says, one of the things you got to realize with politicians is if they're not elected, they don't have anything, but there's nothing, right? And so when you're in a situation like that, to be elected, you probably won't stop at anything, right? In a certain sense, especially if you're not holding, as you mentioned, like things like truth and integrity.
Yeah.
The second thing, and this kind of goes back to how you were talking about the community and how you were saying about it, is what my father said years ago. He said, there's times when you just got to take a blank piece of paper out and write down again where you're at. And that's exactly what you did.
No,
it's kind of crazy how that works.
And you have to have some faith in the human psyche that if you touch enough people of like mind, then you can change the course. Like I honestly find that we are in a horrible, like you and I talked about David Lynch's The Blue Velvet, right? The movie. And the opening scene where we have the fire truck and the Dalmatian dog, and we have, the lady sipping tea, watching her television, the school, the kids crossing the street and the school ground, right, with the stop sign. And then all of a sudden the gentleman suffers a heart attack. The dog's playing with the squirted water. The woman on TV is watching a dark noir film about guns. And then the camera pans to ants devouring an ear, right? Which sets the background for the movie.
The contrast.
If you take the politics of today, that mirrored image of the fire truck, the school guard crossing, the man watering his garden, the dog playing with the water, a woman sipping tea, watching TV. We are living in that moment. But outside of that moment is exactly what David Lynch said back in that movie back in the 80s. The ants are devouring. We have people in power in places that are devouring democracy to a degree, society norms, right? And they're responding to issues by the most powerful nation in the world. And maybe we should have had some structure, realizing that there's the potential of this. I mean, this has been going on now south of the border for a very long time. And so structure, and I don't think the structure is a handshaking, I'm going to hug you in the middle of the House and Commons where Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney have a hug-in because we've just passed a law that says, if I see something, I'm going to react, and to hell with democracy. I don't care what you're doing or what you have to say. We need to react in terms of, and to a certain degree, there's some truth to that. You need to react, but it can't be at the behest and ignoring democracy, right?
No. Well, I think that's one of the things that we probably take for granted in many ways, right? Because it's like all the things that go on in our lives, right? Like I just don't have time for that.
No.
And yet it's eroding it. Right?
Exactly. So if any of you have not seen Blue Velvet by David Lynch, right? and the song, the Roy Orbison song in the middle of it, I forget the actor's name now, but that's a classic where he's got the light up to his face and only in
Kyle
dreams.
MacLachlan, does that play?
He's he's one of the leads that's trying to figure out what's happened to his girlfriend. And
it's so funny that you're bringing this up, because I was going to say in our conversation when you had said, because my first book, as you kind of noted when you said, I looked a little bit of information up in you. The Globe called the actor that first book.
They did.
David
Your book. Yeah, really? They said there's.
So for me, like that was kind of a crazy endorsement.
Well, I'll tell you right now, reading that caption and your book, if you did not think that would attract me to what you've written, you would be wrong, because it did.
That's wonderful.
Because I just think David Lynch and his director prowess in terms of taking images and movies and just sort of obscuring them a bit and taking and say, look, this is what's happening in your world. The fire truck, yes, all of those things. Your kids are going to school. You're enjoying a cup of tea, but you can't ignore the ants devouring the ear in the grass, right?
It kind of
and the man having a heart attack.
Yeah.
Who's responding to that? A toddler responds.
It does embody that theme of what you see is not necessarily what you think it is.
No,
right?
Exactly.
So I want to get back. Because when I met you, you brought me this kind of special thing, and this is something that's pretty important.
Yeah.
And so this was you had brought this to me quite unexpected to me.
Yeah. Right.
But in our first conversation, you started to bring this up.
Yeah.
And this is, well, you're going to do a lot better idea. But he explained this with regards to what he's now really focused on and working on.
Well,
right?
if you were to define my active life now, it's South Delta politics.
It's
South Delta politics.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, yes.
And the looming municipal elections.
Yes.
A year from now. Still music. Yeah. Right. If I'm going to make a connection to young people, I can listen to whatever genre of music, you name it. Current. In fact, I just finished listening to Taylor Swift's new album, and it's phenomenal.
Cool.
From my perspective, right? Yeah. It's a pretty.
You love music.
It's a pretty good music, right? Yeah. And so maybe an older generation would look at too much glitzy, too much this, but I can also put on Dean Martin and have reflections of my mom and a big band era, right? And I can listen to jazz, and I love blues, and I love the influence American blues has had on the British music industry. Yeah. So those three things, my fire hall is, and so I was out on a bike ride with my fellow firefighters, and my old fire hall had been taken over by the UBC Arts Department. So there was somebody in the department. Most times we go by, it's locked up, and we just sort of look around it, and we have some reflections on our time there. And so I said, somebody's inside. And so I said to my fellow guys, I said, I'm going to go knock on the door and see if. So I knock on the door. First positive is he has a dog, and I love my dog. My dog is my best bud. My dog's name is Tazo. Tazo is with me today. My wife said, are you sure you want Tazo driving all the way out to Abbotsford and sitting in the car? And I said, I looked at the weather to make sure it wasn't going to be hot. And I said, her and I will do our thing. I just think when I finish this session with Douglas, having her on my ride home is going to be just right. So
we have that in common.
I know, because you got Maya, right? Right. And so we met Maya, and this morning I had to, hi Maya, how are you doing?
Maya doesn't like to give up. People very
exactly
easily.
Right. And so her and I made it. Yeah, okay, I remember you now. Good thing. Yeah, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm glad to see you. So it was really cool. And so they're going to tear it down because they need to build space for the Souder School of Business, right? And so I tell the guys, and I'm getting kind of a shrug of the shoulders. It's our history. Who cares? We're not there anymore. And so I go home, and I say to them, and this is now 3 years, and I'm going to try and give voice to my fire hall and everything it did for the years I served and the firefighters that served before me. And so I just started on this cause. And the first part of it was let's everybody know that this fire hall exists. So Mayor Ken Sim got it, the city manager of Vancouver got it, the premier got it, the firefighters union got it, the Vancouver Fire Union got it, everybody. And for the most part, that sort of shrug of the shoulders. Who cares? You guys aren't in existence anymore. It's, whatever. So anyway, I, as a result of doing that, I ended up getting a phone call from Saad Shoaib, and he's one of the premier's executive assistants. And he says, Steve, you have caught my attention with this stuff on your fire hall. And he said, I am going to arrange a meeting with you and the premier. And so he said, so he filters all the stuff. He's no longer there. I mean, the political life of these kind of people with the politician, it's whoever serves me best. It's like a contract thing.
Absolutely.
And he's a young guy, and it sounded to me like he was quite shocked based on the job he's doing. But after the premier got reelected, it was like, you're yesterday's news. I'm bringing somebody else in. That's what I got. Anyway, he was there and he arranged this meeting. There was a glitch, though, that somebody within the constituency, because his constituency is UBC.
Oh, okay.
So somebody within that constituency has to be at the meeting with me. And so now I'm reaching out to a Vancouver a UBC firefighter that lives on the west side of the city. His wife's a lawyer, and they have one of the most spectacular houses that I've seen based on being a lawyer. They're west side people, live off of Dunbar. And his name is Dan Jackhart. And Dan Jackhart's history, he actually played in the World Cup of Rugby back in the day. Wow. So he has this pedigree, and he's a very well-respected firefighter just in his sports endeavors and just everything he's done in his life. And so he said, Steve, I can help you. So
persistence and connections.
He knew this gentleman named Mihar, whose dad and him lived on the University Endowment lands in this palatial estate, acres of land. And so he said, they connected. He said, we'll help you. So I phoned Shahi back and said that I've got, people. Yeah, I've got, and he says, fine, I'm going to arrange the meeting. So we had the meeting, and the premier was insightful in listening. And it was by Zoom. And so it was, we were at this person's place and he was in his office. And so we had this time frame to meet. And then because it had gotten to his attention, he's not going to turn to us. And I respect him for that and say, well, thank you very much. And then you go, oh, what the hell was that all about? He was saying somebody, okay, you need to connect Steve with this. You need to connect Steve with this. You need to do this. So I worked with this premier's assistant and meeting different people. And the pivotal meeting was I end up meeting with basically the directors of UBC as it relates to development, like the top people.
Good.
And so we have, my first meeting is with one of these individuals at the Loaf Cafe out at UBC. So I have to park at UBC. That's my old stomping ground. I wander through this sea of students to the Loaf Cafe. And if somebody had blindfolded me, and I could have been in a cafe in Paris, I could have been anywhere in the world. Yeah, I'm transferred to this, just full of young people and studying and kids on their laptops, having a coffee. And so we met and I explained the situation and then the president got involved and they've been very supportive and they are a part of my ongoing message on the fire hall. Cool. And it's slowly reaching a fruition as it relates. So it's being saved. They've moved it to a parking lot and they had to cut it into 4 sections because it was so big. And now my message is it should be a voice for all of us. And it should be a learning building at UBC, not a coffee bar or a student lounge, right? With a nameplate on the front. Because there's Vancouver Fire's old 22 hall on 70th Avenue. It started off with something and it's turned into really nothing other than a nameplate says this is the old fire hall, number 22 fire hall, right? There's no interaction based on the community.
You don't want this just to be a symbol. You want this to be a working, functioning. Yeah,
a light. Right. And because I know when firefighters get involved, again, I go back to my analogy, they make a difference. Now, there's not a whole lot of people. Where is the money coming from? Where are the dollars coming from? Right? I have every fire department and union in the province is aware of this endeavor. The provincial union is aware of this endeavor. I have connected to the Vancouver firefighter retirees, held meetings at Fire Hall 18 with limited participation in terms of a shrug of the shoulders. Who cares? And if I was to take all of this, you have to be emboldened by your passion for what we did as a fire department, impassioned by at least the premier listened and helped support. And UBC is right now the definitive listener. And then also I ended up with, I get this. So I sent these surveys out They all got self-addressed envelopes. I'm into this for a significant amount of money because I believe in it passionately. And the return results are not the best. I was at a meeting the other day and asked me, and I said, well, you're in probably the 20-25% range of return, and taking into account they've got self-addressed envelopes, not good, right? If I'm honest, it's not good. So
well, it's not great, but it's a start.
So I get this one from I can't recollect the name, from a volunteer department, and they've left me a check, and they've said, Steve, I really support what you're doing. He said, here's some money to the cause. In a sort of volunteer, I'm up north, right, department, and I'm kind of like, wow. So I go into my bank because it says the UBC Fire Hall. And I go, how do I transfer this to my business account? And so the manager, Coast Capital, he comes over and he says, why don't you come in tomorrow morning? We're going to think about this. We're going to straighten this thing out. So my wife comes with me. We are sectioned off into an area, and I'm given a resource person within my Coast Capital. Yeah. And we sit down. Very nice gentleman, Hardeep, I think his name is. And we sit down and we formulate this bank account based on the check. We give it a name, which is on the business card, which is an association with the union, my local 901. And the fire hall. So at some point, if it becomes a charitable thing, people writing a check will see the analogy towards the check they're writing to the fire hall and the union and our local.
The connection.
And so my big picture view is, if it becomes this educational light for the fire service, that the cause will be our mental health. Not only will be a place where education, because if there's one thing that rises to the core with technology and everything that's going on around us, is our mental health. And a lot of our mental health, we disappear into the fire truck with the Dalmatian dog. We know that those ants in the ear are still there, right? Yeah. But we can revert to this. I'm still taking my son to hockey. We're still in the school system. I'm going to a Christmas choir with my daughter. My daughter's in a choir. So we look forward to every December going to listen to her sing. But we all know that, you just flick on the news and you flick on something and you know that there's a lot of stuff going on that's not good. No, and so our first point of reference is we revert back into normalcy, which is okay because it's still there and exists, right? But that normalcy, if we don't pay attention to this stuff that's going on, it erodes and will disappear. No, right?
Absolutely. And your charges, like your persistence is paying off. Like
So amazing. Some days I have. No, so I'm in regards to that. I gave you these. These are cool. And I also I have had T-shirts made up, and this is a rendering off an artist called Raymond Chow. My wife's an artist, so she took Raymond Chow's and she did an etching. Isn't that so? That's an exact replica of the fire hall that's been saved, and that when it gets transplanted, that's exactly what it'll look like. Cool, and you can see UBC Fire Hall and the local 901 IAFF. And so that's in respect to the, check this out. I know this is in respect to the fire department. Oh, this is the other one. Yeah. You did. Cool. So this T-shirt is to do with our fire department. Oh, man. Now, the controversy is I've even had some of my fellow firefighters say, well, I don't know if I think that's appropriate, is on the back, the key word being paramedic. And will it be controversial? Absolutely. It will be. And it's done by, I've put that in because I am celebrating our history. Yeah. If we were a functioning department, that would not be on the T-shirt. No. But we are no longer a functioning department. So I feel I have sort of the insight to put that on, to start a conversation about the importance of pre-hospital care, right? Yeah, and I've already had other firefighters talk to me and said, well, what's this? Right now, there's only 2 fire departments in the province of BC that can use that term. One's in Kitimat, which is a functioning, because Kitimat is remote. Yeah. And the province and the ambulance, paramedics, and the unions and that have decided that we'll leave that alone. There's so much other stuff going on that to try and put an ambulance station in there, the cost, the paramedics, housing, because it's remoteness. So they have left Kitimat as a functioning fire department. Yeah, with the BC ambulance.
Well, you know, when you put that in there, like it's like, to me, and what Steve's talking about is here on this second part here. But what's so interesting to me about it, and you talked about this earlier on, when you're in need, when you're in this situation, whatever it is,
exactly,
you're not looking at it from, are you a paramedic?
No, right.
Are you certified?
Yeah, right.
Like
exactly.
you're here to save me from the situation I'm in.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very cool.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy.
Well, we ended up, when we finished, Dr. Peter Bransford, he ended up sending us a letter because he wanted us trained up to the paramedic level because we were interfacing with BC Ambulance in Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
There was no longer metropolitan. The ambulance service had established itself, but they hadn't got around to the various fire departments and say, we're now going to put a station in. So we were doing our thing in a red fire ambulance with Red Cross stuff on it, a 7-level stretcher and all the stuff. And we were trained up to, at that time, we were EMA 2s. Wow. And so we got this letter from Dr. Ransford congratulating us on achieving this milestone as a fire department. And it was just at the initially. And the other thing that we did, we were at UBC, is we had probably one of the most recognized effective recruit training programs in the Lower Mainland. Yeah. So, and you would hear that from the various people that were going through Vancouver, all these different places. Then they would come and go through ours, and they would, at an interview, they would say, "You guys are just blowing it out of the water with in terms of what I had to go through in terms of physical aptitude and all this stuff." We used to use at that time, Dr. Ted Rhodes used to do all the fitness testing for the Canucks, and Ted Rhodes used to take fitness to a whole different level that he could give the Canucks organization
makes a difference.
A reading on. So when I knew he was at UBC, I said, "Can you help me out?" And I said, "This is what I'm doing." And these are all young people. And he said, "Absolutely, Steve." So the biggest thing was at the end of the stuff that Dr. Rhodes used to put the Canucks and the future firefighters recruit process that we had was they would put them on this treadmill with strappings, and they would start it off, and it would start going like this, and they know, I want the job, I want right, and then all of a sudden they would put thumbs up, and then they would raise them up that they couldn't do it anymore, and then he would do all the test results, their head up, all of their heart rate.
How cool is that?
Yeah, I know. So we got I got a phone call from a Colin Evans in West Vancouver. And he said, "Steve, it's Chief Evans in West Vancouver." And he says, "I'm interviewing all these guys, and everybody's talking about your recruit training program, pre-recruit training program." He says, "Would you do the recruit process for us on a contract basis?" Right? And then we had another department guy. And I said, "Absolutely." So I had the time of my life. The West Vancouver Union was there, the fire chief's there, and they're going through our recruitment process that this little dingy department out at UBC had put together. Wow. And the people thought, "Wow, this is just awesome." And so when you have those moments, you know you were a paramedic, and you know the seamless difference it makes when somebody, because you brought up the point, when somebody calls for help, they just want help, right? They don't want to say, "Well, the emergency ward is closed," you know, we don't have this and we don't have that. And it's a huge conversation for society, politicians too. And then it came, all of this stuff we talk about and so at some point, the politics of how we manage ourselves in a democracy, dollars have to come in, and we've tried pretty much everything. If you talk to somebody with a lot of money, they'll say, "I get taxed enough." But I honestly think maybe people who have money should form some kind of consortium and look at what's going on around them, right? And say, we can do more, right? When you look at the amount of money some of the athletes are making, right? I mean, they were interviewing Connor McDavid the other day. He's got he's going to stay 2 more years on top. And he's a few more dollars are thrown in. And it's like $12 million a year, right? It's like if they're playing 8 months of hockey. So,
numbers aren't relatable to like the common person.
No, they're not. They're not. So, but that part of society, because if you tell them that you need to do more, they reflect that on a politician telling them, and I'm going to put my hand in your pocket and take more. And the history of doing that doesn't necessarily lead to equality, right? It just gets all askew. And I understand a person that has money saying that I don't want to do, I do enough, right?
Oh, absolutely. You could hear it over and over again. I can't help but kind of reflect here on this whole idea and I saw this in a show or something the other day, when a person is like in trouble, right? And the person who's there with them, and whether someone's coming or not, just telling them someone's coming,
it's going to come to help.
There's a hope that somehow goes into our heart that gives us something more versus nobody's coming.
No,
it's all over.
Yeah.
It's like and it's kind of,
you thought this was stressful. Now I'm going to tell you something that's even more stressful. There is no hope.
And I think that there's an essence that kind of connects when you go back telling the story about how you converted your Plymouth. I think it was
right.
into like literally almost like an ambulance for carrying music,
for carrying speakers around.
And I thought I couldn't help but you carried that like through like the entire thing. I can't, like, this has been kind of a crazy talk to me.
I mean, we've got
I want to kind of, before we wrap up, like, you've gone through a lot of stuff.
I just have to touch on one thing in terms of politics. I want to get this in. So when we talk about the hug fest between the Conservatives and Liberals, because we've just passed a motion that says I don't need to talk to the common man about things I'm going to do because I have to react instantaneously to what's going on south of the border.
Despite the fact that it's representing them.
Yeah, right. And then we have a leader in the politics of this who has led a party, which the Conservatives, basking in the sunshine because Justin Trudeau's got too big a shadow. Right? There's not too many lights about the current prime minister. And he's trying to hold on for all dear life at the last gasp, but I'm not going to disappear from this job, no matter what the constituents say or what my party says, right? So we have and I wrote an article on this, who decides after a convention in Quebec, he's going to get on a commercial flight, grab the microphone from a stewardess, and tell everybody on that plane, despite not knowing what their political affiliations are, that there are brighter days ahead. And those brighter days are me. Right? And you're going to bask in my sunshine, not in Justin Trudeau's shadow. And I looked at that and I thought, my God, where is the common sense in terms of thinking that this is appropriate or right? So that set me on just a collision course for what's going on. And so then we have an election. He's stomping all across Canada on behalf of his party, right? He's now realizes he's in trouble because the shadow is no longer there. He's disappeared off into the sunset, and he's now on a yacht with Katy Perry. And so now it's a different guy, a different animal. Now, in the course of that election, was somebody not saying, I think you're in trouble in your riding. You've held on to it for 20 years, but the dynamics are you're in trouble. And he's mostly in trouble because the Liberal that he's running against is knocking on doors, talking to people, right? And saying, I am an alternative to this guy, right? And there's now some doubt whether he is this shining light based on we now have a new Liberal leader. So what is the politician's answer to this? I will resign my seat in Northern Alberta. And my community is everything to do with wheat, farming, whatever. And I will now anoint Pierre Poilievre to come in and ride in that riding because we don't have a leader who knows nothing about my community, but in political expediency, right? You can come in. It's a stronghold for conservatism, Northern Alberta, and he gets elected and he's now in Parliament and we're just going, and people stand back and look at that and say, well, the optics of that are pretty good. I can agree with that, right? is not good. If you're talking about communities and a functioning democracy, it's just, and I don't care what your political stripes are, it's just not good, right?
There's so many things that kind of get us in that world, Steve, because in both of those elections, the number of people that were on the ballots were, and I don't think a lot of Canadians even are aware of that.
Yeah,
but in the first one, when he lost his seat, there were over 100 people on a ballot. Like, I don't know. I don't care who you are, where you think that fits is unbelievable. But even in the most recent one, there were still, I've heard, upwards of 200 people on the ballot.
Yeah, there was a huge, but the people that are doing that are screaming that our governance in terms of how we elect politicians is not functioning in a technological age. Well, it just is not. I spent 6 months of my life during the last election at a table with a high school teacher, a high school vice principal from John Oliver and Tupper. And we talked to people and we had a community survey. The intent was to have an opinion and get people out and vote in the 2022 elections, right? Yeah. And so every weekend we're out there. I'm loading the table into my vehicle. We're going on this. People are stopping by. With the survey, we're even giving them a self-addressed envelope. So you don't have, I'm not putting a stamp on this, right? So anyway, they go out, they do this. We even have one of the candidates that's running for office stop by and talk to us. And he starts talking to us. I can tell by his tone that this is not Mr. Smith down the road. This is somebody that's within the mix. Yeah. Has political stripes.
Yes.
So he's
aware.
He sits there with us for 20 minutes. He's just about to leave and he points to our sign because we're trying to be fair. Here's all the list of candidates. Yes. Here's the parties. Here's the survey. Get out and vote. Right. Get out and vote. Take a look at the parties. What do they have to offer? What do they have to say? He turns to me and he says, you spelt a name wrong. I said, oh, really? And he said, and I said, well, which name have I spelt wrong? He says, it's that name there. And I said, you wouldn't happen to be that person, would you? And he says, yes, I am.
Oh, wow.
And he's a notary public functioning in the community of Delta. And that just speaks volumes of who he is as a politician, what he's trying to achieve. At the end of the day, what me and this vice principal did was an absolute failure. We only got 26% of people in Beach Grove to get off their butts and to vote. And in Delta, 29%. And the party that everybody's angst over, that's in power, that's doing a whole bunch of things that people are not happy with, there's 29%. He gets, because of proliferation of different candidates, he gets like 5% of 29%, which is like 1.2% in the dynamics of the electorate. And he's leading the city for the next 4 years with his cohorts, right?
Yeah. Well, what you bring about, though, is the importance of voting, right?
Yeah.
And getting out there, like a 29% turnout. Oh, I mean, that's not even a third of the population.
Well, Vancouver they had to elect a wake-up call for Ken Sim and ABC. In April, they had to do a by-election because two of them went to become cabinet ministers within the NDP government, right? So now they got 2 vacant seats. So he hires the head of the police union to run as a candidate. And he hires some other guy.
What a word.
And he's anointed himself as the emperor. But the problem with Ken Sim is he's the emperor with no clothes. And if you don't have a big enough turnout and involvement by the people that you're supposed to represent, it's okay to say the emperor has no, because nobody's listening anyway.
No,
right? It's right. So, but if you have a large electorate and somebody saying this guy and how he's managing the city has no clothes, well, then you're going to pay attention. So he runs these 2 candidates. 15% of the full Vancouver electorate decide to vote, and he gets, something like 2% of the 15% of the people. And that's why the city of Vancouver is going through the exercise they're going through now, because he's in deep caca poo-poo politically trouble, right? So I know I'll solve this. We'll just zero tax increase. Right?
Well, those are the kind of the niceties that kind of happen for sure. No, it's been good point. Good to bring up those things that are affecting all of us, because we all have occasion to vote, right, in multiple levels. And I think your point is very clear. Like, get out. It's a democracy.
Yeah.
Or we're being led to believe it's a democracy.
Yeah, but
let's make it a democracy
by actually showing that we are actually participating, right? And the process needs to change. First past the post. And we did have an opportunity when the NDP wanted to get elected, and they ended up with a minority. They needed the 2 Green Party members to form cabinet. Christy Clark put forward a budget thinking, well, maybe she can squeak through, and the Greens voted and the NDP voted against it. So now John Horgan is the premier, and for the most part a popular premier, because he's he took that, and the Greens said, we want some political stuff out of this. And there are implications, which I'm aware of, that can impact the upcoming elections based on the Greens' input into electoral process within communities. I talk about it periodically, but it doesn't get much airways, because people are, they're putting in towers, they're doing this, right? And that distracts from, my message to all of the people is, you can talk about towers, you can talk about trees coming down, you can talk about your environment, but if you have, even after the elections, if you have no structural process where the communities are actually engaged and listening and participating, you're window dressing on just talking about issues, right? And you're going to be, in 2027, the developer's going to come back, the same image, new people in new places, and you don't have the structure to, to deal with it, right? And so that's my message now to, anytime I do a post on Facebook, I talk about democracy and I talk about processes, and you need to be able to, those things that you're bringing up, and a lot of them are intricacies. Yeah. Well, I don't think this version of the towers can do this, and I understand this, and all of this kind of stuff. But you're having a conversation with yourself and the people of like mind. Yeah. But you're not having a conversation on change and the people that you live with in your community, because there's no structure.
Because you're saying, whether you agree or not, you need to be part of the process.
That's right.
Right? And when it's only the one side, there's no participation.
No, there's no participation.
And I think that's I think that's one of the things that, for whatever reason, we're missing in society, and it's not just in Canada.
No,
it's like we kind of got to the point where we don't want any opposition.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not good.
No, it's not good. And you know what? Technology has exacerbated the situation. Absolutely. Because it's not hindered. It's not hindered by things that you and I, as a person, and our voice, and getting in politics, and right. It just, what's next? What's the company putting at next? And technology is screaming full speed ahead. And at some point in time, you need to have a conversation, society does, as it relates to technology and its role, and embrace it as a partner. Because you and I discussed this prior to coming in the room, that if it's going to be an element of control, and the human psyche is, I want to control this entity, and it may, and I can't, when I say it, I can't even envision that, but it may be one of a partnership where technology realizes it's part of something that we are doing, and we're doing it together, right?
When you say that, we talked about this earlier on, and I think, to me, this is what technology could help us with, and that is truth. And that is getting to whatever that truth may be, because technology is stripping away, like when I talk of technology, I talk about AI. It's stripping away some of the things that previously we would have spent a lot of time trying to figure out.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a real benefit to us, but it's also got another side, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to be kind of aware of that.
Yeah, no, you do. You have to,
Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming out to this podcast.
I appreciate it.
We've covered a lot of bases today.
I don't know how long we've been going, but
Well, I do want to, like, I was going to say, you've gone through a lot of different things. In wrapping up, because I see so many connections with your life, your story, how they, like, it's almost like you've been meant to do what you're doing now, right? It's like, it's just kind of fit together. But is there anything that, like, you'd like to say just to kind of wrap up, to say, like, because you've talked a lot about community and you've talked a lot about truth and getting to that. You've demonstrated through your story persistence, amazing persistence. Is there anything else you'd like?
One thing it's there's some of this, there has to be simplicity to it, so that the majority of people you are embracing and can understand what you're saying. And I'll use an example of John Horgan was a very popular, no matter what your political stripes were, he was a very popular premier because of who he was and his personality. And the day after Christy Clark's budget got defeated and he now became the power with the Green support, he went out onto the Portman Bridge and he said, effective tomorrow morning or midnight tonight, the tolls are coming off these bridges, right? A political, common sense, common message. Everybody understood. And the message was why, if we're together and in a partnership, should me coming from Delta pay nothing, but you, if you've decided to live in Langley or Abbotsford, you now have to pay a toll coming over this bridge. So I don't know the finances of it, and it's going to be complicated because we do generate revenue to pay for the bridge. But political and talking to the common person, standing up on that day, that afternoon, in the center span of that bridge and doing that, spoke volumes of who he was as a person and as a politician. And that it's too bad in his passing, because the dynamics of him and what he did is something that we should not let go of, right?
Absolutely.
And we should sort of gravitate towards.
I didn't know that story, but man, oh man, that's a great story to end on, Steve. Like, holy cow. No, very good.
So, and then, like I said, you and I talked. My three focuses is my fire hall, absolutely, my politics in South Delta, which I'm still involved in, and my music, right? Awesome. And my music keeps me going and carrying on. And if you're in Beach Grove and on Halloween night, come and visit Darth Maul DJing dance music and all the young kids dancing.
I was going to say, when you said you dressed as Gene Simmons, man, get that out to Gene. He might have a visit to you.
You just never know, right?
Again, John, or Steve, I can't thank you enough for coming out here.
Yeah, no worries.
What a conversation.
I appreciate that I took the remote.
What a way to
I know, because if I hadn't taken the remote, man alive, and hadn't been on a family, which is also a strength in family is also something too, right? Absolutely. And doing those things with my family and my grandkids. And I'll mention all their names: Seren, Olin, Ivy, and Reese, and my daughter Caitlin, and my son Travis. We couldn't be more prouder of them and what they're doing and carrying on with their lives. And
wow, yeah. What a father figure you are.
And my loving wife, Marion, because I wouldn't be here without all her love and support over many, many, many years. And like any marriage, there are ups, there's downs, there's blips, right? And the strength in a marriage is when you're having those blips, that you may be questioning what a relationship is, that you can look at each other's eyes, see the love, and give each other a hug and you move on.
When you say love, I think of the other 4-letter word, which is work.
Yeah.
And the two of them kind of mash right together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Great. Anyway, we're gonna wrap up here, and I thank you. Like I said, Steve Nordin. What a story we've heard here today. The success is amazing. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you'll tune in to other episodes as well and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Better Than Not, so you can hear more stories like Steve's and how they all come together, and the important work that he's doing with the UBC fire station. Amazing stuff. With that, thanks again, Steve. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.